Or if the standard said you can present it on the basis of functions of government, that is either how much is spent on health, how much is spent on education, how much is held on administration. But the public said, well, I'm not so sure. I know administration is important because if this consumes a lot of resources, then that's a concern. But they're more, the research shows that they are more interested on the programs, service delivery. This is where we need to. The public sector very much puts a lot of attention on compliance. Did the government officials spend the money according to the laws of the country? And how can we provide that information in order to regain trust of the public sector? In many of the African countries, the issue about corruption is big. Very few countries in Africa have very low levels of corruption. And that is uppermost in there. And how can we have this financial statement capturing this compliance? Where you see there's this issue about unauthorized expenditure. And I have had that difficult debate with the government. Unauthorized expenditure, what is it? Irregular expenditure, negatory expenditure. Because these are expenses not within the laws. Now, how do you show that? Do you show it on the face of the financial statement of financial performance, and in the statement of financial position? And how do you disclose that? The normal tradition is to show them under receivables, and it's hidden there. And we say, no, keep them separate so that the public knows that this money was unauthorized and somebody regularly made use of it, so it's receivable. So some of the people. The public wants to know what is sovereign debt. I think based on the experiences in 2007, 2008, now, there, under the IFSAPs, you do not have a statement of public debt. But you can, under the accrual basis, disclose it in the note that this is the sovereign debt. And surprisingly, you meet these public accounts of committee members in Parliament. They say, no, but why don't you give us a full statement of the sovereign debt? You know, there are so many components of public debt. There's the external debt, where African countries borrow from the international community, multilateral financial institutions. Then there's also the domestic debt, where they borrow internally through issuance of treasury bills or bonds or any other financial instruments. There's even a much bigger debt, what we know as the expenditure payment arrears, where government has not paid for goods and services which have been contracted. And in some of these countries, you find that the expenditure payment arrears for the whole country is bigger than the national budget of the country for 1 year or 2 years. So if this is not even captured in the financial statement, so how will people trust the public sector? The other one is contingent liabilities. Governments, the public sector, have hidden huge contingent liabilities, either by way of giving guarantees to the public sector institutions and increasingly to the subnational governments. Because in some countries, the subnational governments, because they have their own council, that is their own parliament, they can go and borrow. And then they come back to the central government, Minister of Finance, okay, could you give us a guarantee? Now, these are huge. In the IFSAPs, under accrual, you can disclose that in the notes. And it's hidden there. But people want to know how much guarantees has the central government given out. How much? to subnational governments, to the national government, and for what purposes? We also have contingent liabilities. In many of these countries, increasingly were becoming litigious countries. So every now and then, and because some lawyers and shrewd financiers, the easy and the quick way is that any fault by this government, you take it to court. And then you win the case because the Attorney General's office is weak, cannot defend the country. And nobody feels the impact of these cases. So the court issues an order and gives an award. And in one country I know of where these court cases have accumulated to an enormous liability. And they say, well, we are contesting that, and that liability there. And when you look at the laws for public financial management, they say court awards are a direct charge to the consolidated fund. Whether you budget for it or not, once the court has awarded, it must be paid from the consolidated fund of budget. So then how can you have trust in the public sector when you have these problems? The other issue is about those outstanding commitments. You may have heard about what we call the medium-term expenditure framework. Governments enter into 3-year or 4-year commitments, say, for constructions of hospitals or construction of dams for electricity generation, or like in your case is the nuclear power station, for example. I mean, these are projects which go beyond 1 year, and we follow a cash basis of budgeting, where the annual appropriations expires at the end of the year, and then you have projections. Now, yes, if you follow the RFS, you can disclose those commitments in the notes, but a disclosure note is not just sufficient. It's too, you hide away a lot of information. Yes, so thank you. So under the current reporting, the statement of financial performance is useful, but I think it needs to be improved on. To take into account program budgeting, which is a big issue in some of the countries, the statement of financial position is very much understood and useful, but only if it can be made more simpler for people to understand. Statement of changes in net, on the changes in equity and net asset is still useful, but not very